So we're going to take a moment here to go back in time. And I'm going to show you what Joe Biden does when he debates. This is what Joe Biden looks like when he debates. Now, you saw him in the primary season, but honestly, in many ways, he's a shadow of his former self. Now, I would argue he did worse when there were more people on stage. He just didn't seem as with it, didn't get much in. He gave us some cringeworthy moments when he did talk. What was the one that really blew up that we covered and everybody covered, basically? Oh, the kids hear words, and the record player. Turn the record player on at night. Make sure the kids hear words. The phone. People were like, what are you saying? So that was bad. But you'll notice when he got one-on-one with Bernie, he actually came across as a pretty good debater. Now, why? Well, I would argue he was probably on something which kept him there cognitively, but also he lies like a rug. I mean, he's sort of like Trump in that he'll lie relentlessly. Like Bernie was pinning him on something in his record, and Biden just acted like, no, wrong, I didn't do that. And Bernie's like, yes, you did, we have the votes. And he's like, no, I didn't do that. I remember watching that going, this is insane. Like, you're at a permanent disadvantage in a debate if one of the people in the debate just disregards reality brazenly, and that's what he did. So, anyway, he's not bad one-on-one, but we're going back to when Joe, was Uncle Joe. And he actually, I think, was a phenomenal politician, and he buried Paul Ryan. So here, now this, released this the other day, I want to show you some of the more interesting parts. Take a look.
You want to ask basically why I'm pro-life? It's not simply because of my Catholic faith. That's a factor, of course. But it's also because of reason and science. For our 7-week ultrasound for our firstborn child. And we saw that heartbeat.
With regard to abortion, I accept my church's position on abortion as what we call de fide doctrine. Life begins at conception. That's the church's judgment. I accept it in my personal life. But I refuse to impose it on equally devout Christians and Muslims and Jews. And I just refuse to impose that on others, unlike my friend here, the congressman. I do not believe that we have a right to tell other people that women, they can't control their body. It's a decision between them and their doctor. In my view, in the Supreme Court, I'm not going to interfere with that.
They passed the stimulus. The idea that we could borrow $831 billion, spend it on all these special interest groups, and that it would work out just fine. That unemployment would never get to 8%. It went up above 8% for 43 months. They said that right now, if we just passed this stimulus, the economy would grow at 4%. It's growing at 1.3.
And I love my friend here. I'm not allowed to show letters, but go on our website. He sent me 2 letters saying, by the way, can you send me some stimulus money for companies here in the state of Wisconsin? We sent millions of dollars. You know why he said
you did ask for stimulus money?
Sure, he
correct?
did. By the way,
on 2 occasions, we advocated for constituents who are applying for grants. That's what we do. We do that for all constituents who are applying.
I love that. I love that. This is such a bad program, and he writes me a letter saying, writes the Department of Energy a letter saying, the reason we need this stimulus, it will create growth and jobs. His words. Governor Romney on 60 Minutes, I guess it was about 10 days ago, was asked, Governor, you pay 14% on $20 million. Someone making $50,000 pays more than that. Do you think that's fair? He said, oh, yes, that's fair. That's fair. And they're going to talk about, you think these guys are going to go out there and cut those loopholes? The loophole, the biggest loophole they take advantage of is the carried interest loophole and capital gains loophole. They exempt that. Now, there's not enough. The reason why the AEI study, the American Enterprise Institute study, the Tax Policy Center study, the reason they all say taxes are going to go up in the middle class, the only way you can find $5 trillion in loopholes is cut the mortgage deduction for middle-class people, cut the health care deduction for middle-class people, take away their ability to get a tax break to send their kids to college. That's why they arrive.
Is he wrong about that?
He is wrong about that. You can cut tax rates by 20%. And still preserve these important preferences for middle-class taxpayers.
Not mathematically possible.
It is mathematically possible. It's been done before. It's precisely what we're proposing.
It has never been done before.
It's been done a couple of times, actually.
It has never been
Jack
done
Kennedy
before.
lowered tax rates, increased growth. Ronald Reagan.
Now you're Jack Kennedy.
Ronald Reagan. Republicans and
amazing.
Democrats have worked together on this. I
That's
understand
right.
you guys aren't used to doing bipartisan deals.
But we've told each other what we're going to do. When we did it with
Republicans
Reagan,
and
he said,
Democrats,
here are the things we're going to cut.
Here's the framework. Let's
Here's what
work
he
together
said.
to fill in the details. That's exactly.
Fill in the details.
That's how you get things done. You work with Congress. Look, let me say it this way.
That's
Romney
coming
was
from
governor.
the Republican Congress working bipartisanly.
Mitt Romney.
7% rating.
Mitt Romney.
We immediately went out and rescued General Motors. We went ahead and made sure that we cut taxes for the middle class. And in addition to that, when that occurred, what did Romney do? Romney said, no, let Detroit go bankrupt. We moved in and helped people refinance their homes. Governor Romney said, no, let foreclosures hit the bottom. But it shouldn't be surprising for a guy who says 47% of the American people are unwilling to take responsibility for their own lives. My friend recently in a speech in Washington said 30% of the American people are takers. These people are my mom and dad, the people I grew up with, my neighbors. They pay more effective tax than Governor Romney pays in his federal income tax. They are elderly people who, in fact, are living off of Social Security. There are veterans and people fighting in Afghanistan right now who are, quote, not paying any taxes. I've had it up to here with this notion that 47%, it's about time they take some responsibility here. They should be signing a pledge saying to the middle class, we're going to level the playing field. We're going to give you a fair shot again. We are going to not repeat the mistakes we made in the past by having a different set of rules for Wall Street and Main Street.
Not bad, huh? Not bad. I don't even know if they had the part in there, the malarkey part. There's a famous moment where he says to Paul Ryan, like, that's a bunch of malarkey. And there's another part where he says, that's a bunch of stuff. Like, you could tell he wants to say shit, but he, like, reels it in at the last moment. Like, that's a bunch of stuff. So, listen, he was a good debater. He was a good debater. I don't think there's any way around that. The thing that he does so effectively, and this makes him a good communicator. Yes, you could see a giant difference between 2012 and now. Like, you could tell cognitively he's on the decline for sure, and it's hard to watch. But what he does so well there is, so he's smiling a lot, which sends off like a good vibe, but he's both incredibly dismissive of Paul Ryan and likable at the same time, which is just like a perfect mix for somebody like Paul Ryan, who really is smug and overrated and in over his head, and he's a child who read one too many Ayn Rand books, and it stuck with him. And yeah, he was trounced by Biden. Biden absolutely trounced him. So he started, you heard the nuanced abortion comments there. I thought that, I thought those were good. I thought those were pretty solid. Now, some people would argue, hey, drop the whole, like, I accept it in my personal life thing, but I don't know. I think that line on abortion actually lands well. Then he talked about how Paul Ryan, as he publicly bashes the stimulus program that they did, and this is in response to the subprime mortgage crisis and the Great Recession, he publicly bashes the stimulus while begging for stimulus money. So publicly, he says this thing is a disaster, this thing is terrible, it's adding so much money to the debt and the deficit, it's unacceptable, we can't do it, it doesn't even work. And then privately, he's writing letters to Joe Biden asking for stimulus money and saying, like, this will create jobs and growth. What happened? I thought you said if it's government money, it by definition does not create jobs and growth, that's illegitimate, that's a drain on the economy. What happened? He's full of it. He's full of it. This is just like with Mitch McConnell pretending like, he's got these right-wing economic beliefs. Any pork project he can get for his home state, he loves it. Like, it's what all these guys do. They're frauds. Then he argues against trickle-down economics. I'm reminded of one of his best lines that he delivered in his DNC speech in 2012, where he said, Bin Laden is dead and GM is alive. That got like the biggest roar. There were headlines everywhere about that. That is a good line. That absolutely is a good line. And he has something that Hillary didn't have, which is when Trump attacks him on NAFTA, when Trump attacks him on outsourcing, he can immediately say, like, I'm the guy who saved GM. You're telling me I don't care about these workers? I saved GM. It was our administration that bailed out General Motors, and we're proud of that. So he's got that rebuttal, which again is not something Hillary just didn't know how to respond and look economically populist like Trump did. Biden has the ability, even though it's half BS, half true, he's got the ability to come across as economically populist. And then the 47% comment, that really, people forget how big of an impact that had on the 2012 race. It was very close to the election, if I remember correctly. And there were these there's like this high dollar fundraiser that Mitt Romney was at, and he had this line about how 47% of the American people don't want to take responsibility. They're effectively takers, they're parasites, and then, it's the rest of us are makers. And the real argument was like, Republicans are incredibly productive members of society, and the Democrats are the takers, they just want free stuff. That was the argument. And, basically, the way that was perceived by the public is, oh, you don't want to be president of the United States of America. You don't want to be president of all people. You want to be president for Republicans. And, it's just a disrespectful thing to say, as if like what? 47% of the country, so all these Democrats are just like not working and they have the ability to work, but they choose not to work? Of course not. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But it was a huge moment. The other thing that was big was Obama really hit Romney on, like, he was investing in companies that were outsourcing during the election. Like, he was in management for these companies, and these companies were outsourcing jobs during the election. So Obama and Biden and their team sent people to, like, interview all these people who are having their jobs outsourced during the campaign, and that was a devastating ad that destroyed Mitt Romney. It showed him as Thurston Howell III, the out-of-touch elitist that he is, and it's one of the reasons he lost. People forgot that in 2012, Obama ran a very populist campaign, and Biden also leaned into this stuff as well. So he was a good debater. Now, he has cognitively declined since then, but just like in the debate against Bernie recently that Biden did, he was on something and he was pretty good. And I honestly think most people expect Trump to win the debates by a lot. And so Biden has a lower bar to clear now. And as long as he's on something and he has a performance even half as good as the one against Paul Ryan, he could do well. He could do well. So, don't underestimate old Uncle Joe with how he has the ability to come across as like a straight shooting, likable guy, even though his record has many, many issues for sure that we talk about all the time on this show. Don't underestimate him as a politician. He's actually a pretty damn skilled politician, and I think you could see a lot of that shine through in the debate with Paul Ryan.